And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to another incredible Mentorship Meetup Wednesday. Today, we are going to be continuing the topic of ashes and authority, part 2. We're going to talk about wielding God's or how to harness God's fire today. So I hope y'all brought your fire extinguishers. I hope y'all brought some kindling. I hope y'all brought all of the stuff that you need to start a raging fire in your life today, because last week we got to talk a little bit about how to start a fire. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you a little bit story time while we give everybody an opportunity to jump in here in the Zoom room on our live streaming, which, by the way, for those of you on social media who are watching this recording or jumping in live, I do want to let you know, get in the Zoom room. This is Mentorship Meetup Wednesday, which means after we cut the camera, after we get off live stream, we actually have some interactive back and forth where I answer questions, I mentor, I equip, we impart, we do all of that really fun stuff in the breakout rooms after the camera's cut. So I want you to go ahead to www.myprophetictribe.com, sign up for our free mailing list, join us, book a free consultation, whatever it is you need to do to get in this Zoom room. You don't want to miss it. This is where, honestly, a lot of the download actually comes. I cannot tell you the amount of times one of my tribe has asked me what seems like to them maybe a really silly question. And it's actually blown open a huge topic, and we're able to have a discussion. God brings revelation, people get healed. Ask any one of my tribe. If y'all are in the comment section, any of my tribe watching, drop in the comment section some of the stuff that you've witnessed in our breakout rooms. Let me know how y'all are doing, because when we get together as a tribe, let me tell you something I tell my tribe, and I want you guys to keep this in mind. In fact, pull out your notebook, okay? If you got a phone on you, if you got your laptop, I want you to pull out your notebook. And before we even get started with today's session, I want you to write this down. Okay, right at the top of your notebook, word for word, you're going to write this down. No question is too simple or insignificant if I don't know the answer. Okay, I'm going to repeat that for you. No question is too simple or insignificant if I don't know the answer. I want you to write that right at the top of your notebook, because here in this tribe, I believe in answering your questions. And if I can't answer your question or I don't have the answer, I'm going to find the answer for you, because that's what we do here in our prophetic tribe. Tribe is all about giving you that safe environment to ask your questions, to grow in your prophetic process. And if you can't ask those questions that seem so silly, insignificant, or unimportant, here, where it's safe, where we as a tribe can come together to collaborate on the answer, well, guys, where are you going to ask those questions? Because let's be honest, some of us are leaders. And if we were to stand up on the pulpit and just randomly ask some of the most silliest questions that sit in our hearts, we run the risk of embarrassing ourselves a little bit. We don't all like to be laughed at because we didn't know an answer for something. But here in tribe, I promise you, we are going to work together. So throughout today's session, every class, every mentorship meetup, I want you to write down your questions as they come up. I don't want you to try and wait to remember them till after class. Write it down as it comes up. Save it, because once we get into our mentorship meetup session, once we get into the breakout room, we will be answering those questions if I have not already answered them in the teaching. Now, I've given you guys a few minutes to get settled in. For those of my champions, you guys know you better have reached out to your battle buddies, pop their names in the comment section, because we are going to be getting started. Also, by the way, you guys, summer is coming, which means it is nice and hot. Like, I don't know about y'all, but down here in San Diego, Mexico, it is summer. I get to go out in t-shirts. I get to go out in skirts and dresses. I even got my hair cut nice and short. My poor hairstylist nearly had a heart attack because we cut off almost half a foot of hair. I did not realize I had that much hair, y'all. But he was like, "You're cutting this gorgeous hair." I'm like, "Yes, because it's summer and it is hot. And my hair grows quickly." So let us make sure that you've got your t-shirt, your Next Gen Prophets t-shirts. Got one of yours? I'm a prophet. I shift systems. We got one for the apostle, the teacher, the evangelist, the pastor. No five-fold minister left behind. Make sure you guys have grabbed your t-shirts so that you can, get this, represent and stay cool this summer, all right? And also, by the way, for some of you who are already tried, give us some ideas. What new products should we be releasing this summer, maybe with some of the same logo? Because, we're looking for some ideas. We want to give you guys, we're looking at, I know notebooks and pens are always a great option. We're looking at tumblers, but I feel like tumblers are a little done, in my honest opinion. I don't know. I want something that screams my tribe. What's my tribe need this summer that we can help get together? Jessica Tochi, like, I got ideas. Okay, tribe, throw them at me. Come on. We're gonna work through this. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna collab. But before we get lost in translation, the link for the shirts are in the comment section, in the chat box. Go save it. Go buy your shirt. Go buy it for a friend. Go buy it for a pastor. Make it a proclamation this summer. We are gonna jump into today's mentorship meetup because we are touching on part 2 of Ashes and Authority. Harness the power of God's fire. Now, I need you to understand something about the nature of fire. If you did not catch last week's session, I do recommend you go and catch up on it because we talked about wildfires. And I'm going to continue this theme of discussing fire and the power of fire throughout the next, 30 to 40 minutes. And of course, next week, because I want you guys to understand the destructive nature of fire is designed to cause irreversible change. Whenever a fire breaks out, especially a wildfire, the landscape is forever changed. You cannot go back to how that landscape was a little bit before that fire started. Now, at the beginning of 2025, we had a really huge fire breakout at the beginning of the year in California, and it was called the Palisades Fire. Now, actually, the Palisades Fire was one of several fires that broke out in the LA area. Devastating fires that leveled entire city blocks that have now completely changed the layout of how we were living to this day. Devastating fires that have shifted our perspective on fire safety, fire readiness. Now, I need you to understand something. Fires are not new to those of us who live out here on the West Coast. We are very aware that when it is summer, it gets hot, it gets dry, fires happen. It is not unusual. We expect that. But for such a huge fire to happen at the beginning of the year, where technically it is our most rainiest season, our wettest season, was very not normal. We were not prepared for the devastation that came from such a wildfire. And I want you to understand that fire is not something you can control. Fire is not something that you can decide when, where, and how it's going to burn. There's a certain level of a flame that you can kind of aim and direct, but you will never, ever have full control over fire. And when it comes to talking about how to harness the power of God's fire, I want you to really grasp this picture. God's fire is not to be controlled. God's fire is to be harnessed and used for a particular job that needs to be done. Because too much fire can devastate a landscape. Too much fire can cause irreversible change. The more you struggle with fire, guys, the hotter that flame will become and the more devastation it will leave behind. Some fires need to be left alone to burn out, because if you try to contain it, if you try to handle it, it will just spread and divert more. One of the greatest struggles firefighters have when containing wildfires is the fact that flames are unpredictable. They can be going in one clear line in one direction, but all it takes is a particular spark, a particular stone for that fire to break off and shoot into another direction. Those sparks need to catch the right wind to lead them to the right dry patch, and a fire that was here begins all the way on the other side of town, several miles away, because it caught the right wind. You must allow that fire to die out as God intends it to, and to light as God intends for it to be lit. You are going through a transition in your life. That's why you are listening to this mentorship meetup today. You have been pushing against restriction. You have been pushing against the feeling of being smothered, and you have been covered over. And that is why you are sitting here today, because you need an irreversible change in your life. I'm not talking about, I'm going to go to the cross today and lay my flesh at the cross and just come and be re-sanctified. I'm not talking about sanctification here. I'm talking about an irreversible change of your life as a whole. Because once a scar sets in from a burn, that scar is never going away. That scar is a permanent reminder of the fire you were trapped in, a permanent reminder of what you went through and how it has changed your life, how people view you, how you view life permanently. See, the cross is a daily relationship, or at least I should say, it should be. It is a daily reminder to connect with God, to submit your will, to submit your spirit and your flesh under the will of God, to come into covering with Him. It's a renewal of that covenant we were talking about a few mentorship meetups ago. We are continually renewing our covenant with a daily death on the cross. I used to joke and say, a death a day kept the flesh at bay. That was what I was going. It kept the devil away, kept my flesh at bay. That's what I did. I went and I faced the death of my flesh every day. But fire is not that. Fire is an entire reorientation. We're going to look at the destructive nature of fire. But I want to bring your attention, as we're talking on fire, to Daniel 3, starting at verse 19. Now, when we read about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, we have so much to learn from their journey. But I want you to really pay attention to the process they go through, starting in verse 19 of Daniel chapter 3. So this is after they erect that whole statue, and they, send out the decree that all who don't bow or worship at the foot of the statue are basically to be thrown into the furnace, right? Now, what you need to understand about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, alongside Daniel, these four men were some of the top officials in Babylon at the time. Daniel and his three friends rose up through the ranks. They were known, when we read the beginning of Daniel, to be very good looking, very healthy, very wise and smart. They operated very strongly, and so they caused a lot of jealousy between the rest of their peers who were not necessarily the Israelites. The rest of the young men in the same age range did not find as much favor. So these three men, these wise men that came to test Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, as well as Daniel, all were officials who were jealous of them because they were better looking, because they had more favor with the king, because they rose up in rank, they were promoted in a way that they wanted. They were jealous of them. So they laid a trap that if nobody, knowing that these four men in particular were devout to their God, did not bow and serve and worship at this false idol, these people would be thrown into the fire. They would be thrown into the lion's den. So this is where we're coming from in this story. And it says here that Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He spoke and commanded that the heat of the furnace be 7 times more than it was usually heated. Now, those furnaces were already quite hot. So to go 7 times more was ridiculous. In fact, it was so hot, it says, and he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind the 3 of them and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men, bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because of the king's command and the furnace's heat, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Fire is dangerous already. But when you catch fire with your clothing on, it makes the burn that much worse and more painful. Because clothing, you see, when you get fire on your skin, you can kind of like dust it off almost. You get that initial layer off. It's hot, it burns, but there's a protective layer on your skin. You dust it off, you kind of like put it out, dust it off, put something over it, smother it, you're done. But clothing is inherently dry, and in that day and age, made with materials that were highly flammable. So you could try dusting it off as much as you could, but that fire would stick and it would melt into your skin, causing that flame and that burning sensation to be even worse. They weren't just trying to kill these men, they were trying to torture them because of their disobedience and their refusal to bow down at the feet of this statue. But of course, we then see Nebuchadnezzar astonished because he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" He answered to him and said, "True, O king." "Look," he answered, "I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." Now from there, we transition to our story about how the angel of the Lord appears into that fire, protecting them. He calls them out of the furnace, not a singe of smoke, nothing on their person. We know this part, but I want you to recognize the power of this fire. When God's fire ignites in your life, it is not designed to harm and wound you. It is designed to change you. What burned up in the furnace in this story? The thing or the people that bound Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The thing that bound them, the thing that restricted them is what burned away. Those soldiers that held them burned away. The ropes that bound their arms and their feet, not allowing them to get up and walk away, is what burned away. But the very people whom God had called, who God had chosen to walk in power and authority, remained unharmed. This is the nature of God's fire. It is destructive and it is going to destroy things in your life. And we're going to look at that in just a second. But I want you to understand, God's fire will burn and remove the dross to expose the gold in your life. So if things are getting very hot, if things in your life are being removed at an accelerated pace, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, then you need to understand that those things that were painful are the things that restricted you from truly harnessing the fire of God and accomplishing the very task that He has asked you to do. Yes, it's meant to be painful because He's removing from you the things that have restricted you. It's not meant to be easy. Nowhere in Scripture does it say the call of God is easy peasy lemon squeezy. The call of God is fire. The call of God is the cross. The call of God is persecution. The call of God is meant to be uncomfortable. Because that which is not of God must go. That's why we walk from glory to glory. Daily do we lay our lives down. We must be removed. We live in a world that is dark. We live in a world that is contaminated, and we need that contamination removed from our lives at varying degrees. Gold goes through several melting and purification processes to remove the dross, and still it is never fully at 100% clean. It is not 100% clean, you guys. It must go after layer after layer after layer, melted down, remove the dross, cooled, melted down, remove the dross, cooled again and again and again. It must go through the fire. So if there's anybody here who is listening to this message today, asking God to remove the restriction, but still wants to say, but I am already forgiven, everybody. But I am already doing and living the righteous life. What more can I do, God? This restriction is obviously just warfare. This restriction is obviously just this person. This restriction is obviously just because of my family. If there's anybody here saying, thinking, feeling those words, I need you to understand you're walking in pride. Because if even gold itself, which is purified constantly, cannot reach 100%, how much more you who is participating in the flesh and participating in living in a contaminated world on a daily basis. We are flawed human beings. It is who we are, and that's why we need the power of God to save us. That's why we need the blood of God to compensate for our fleshly human nature. So for anybody out there who believes they're holier than thou and they've got the great nature, holiness, pureness of God, listen, I'm not saying we can't walk closely with God. I'm not saying we can't live a righteous life. I am saying, though, we are human and we need the power and the blood of God to compensate for our human nature, because our human nature is not perfect. And the fire of God has come to remove from us those things restricting the blood from circulating through our body and positioning us under the sanctification of God. Maybe I said that too fast. We need purification for the blood to circulate in our body. Tomorrow we begin our prophetic training course with our tribe. So for those of you who have not already signed up, get signed up, sign up, make sure you are there, because we're going to talk more about that circulation of blood that God has for us as prophetic champions. But I want you to understand the destructive nature of fire. See, the destructive nature of fire can cause loss of life and habitats. They can spread so quickly, they destroy entire habitats, killing animals that can't escape and damaging delicate ecosystems. Guys, God is sending fire to shift your environment. You have been living in a habitat and in a lifestyle that is not healthy. It is a breeding ground for sin. It is a breeding ground for strife. It is a breeding ground for division and sickness and poverty. It is a breeding ground for all of the curses that you have seen in your life. And you cry out to God, God, change me. God, I don't want to be poor anymore. God, I'm tired of being sick. God, I'm tired of being in this cycle of abuse. God, send your fire. And so he sends your fire. And suddenly all those beautiful relationships, habitats, those things that you went through on a daily basis become uncomfortable. Suddenly your workplace is toxic. Suddenly your church doesn't seem as great as it was before. Suddenly that best friend that you had turns out to be a Jezebel. Ladies and gentlemen, the scales have fallen from your eyes. That environment was always like that. You just got comfortable in it. That was your habitat. That is where you lived. That was your ecosystem, that you thrived and you survived it. And the fire of God came down and it exposed just how toxic it really was. Because it was meeting your need. It was making you feel good about yourself. It was making you feel just so loved and so seen and so accepted and so draining that bank account. And so positioning you in areas and environments where you weren't getting sleep, where you weren't eating right, where you were going to bed stressed, having nightmares and dream after dream because you had so much pressure that God did not put on you, forcing you to conform to something God never intended for you to be. Fire comes. It destroys habitats, and it can cause loss of life. But that loss of life is meant to permanently shift your environment, because once you've been burned, you will never go back to that same fire. The second portion of the destructive nature of fire is soil degradation. Hot fires can burn away the topsoil layer, killing microbes and fungi. They can also cause hydrophobic soil, a condition where the soil actually repels water, increasing erosion and reducing plant regrowth. This is the removal of contaminated doctrine. God's fire is going to expose contaminated doctrine. Now, I want you to understand, doctrine isn't necessarily like bad scripture or teachings that you've listened to. Doctrine is the way you view, experience, and express life. Doctrines can be how we have relationships. Doctrines are the way we have formed and view life and then begin to conform others to that lifestyle. So, for example, let's say you grew up in a poverty environment. You came from a poor neighborhood. You came from a poor family. Now you've got money, but you still view money and your lifestyle the way you did when you were in poverty. You fear that loss of money, or you fear making too much money. Money, even though you have plenty of it and don't have to worry, is still determining how, where, what you shop. It is determining who and how you do invest. And yes, you're very generous with your money, but you're still living with this fear factor of, how am I going to do this? There's a doctrine there. There's a doctrine on how you make money. There's a doctrine on how you spend money. There's a doctrine in how you perceive and invest and receive money that needs to be broken. Because if God's calling you to be wealthy, especially as a marketplace prophet, one who's called to produce and create finances, to create systems for the church to receive those finances and for the body to rise up and become wealthy, then you need to remove that doctrine. Being a marketplace prophet is not just about making money. It's about creating systems for the body of Christ to grow and be nurtured, to progress. We create opportunities for others to grow and to progress. We open doors. That's what being a marketplace prophet is about. And if you've got a restriction on how you work with others, if you've got a restriction on how you produce those finances and the opportunities that you give others, a doctrine that restricts you, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Your mandate is capped. Your call is capped. You need to open up those doors. And so fire will come and it will remove and expose and it will seal up any of those cracks that are seeping and taking away from what God has been pouring into you, where it has been stealing your health, where it has been stealing your wealth, where it has been stealing from your relationships. All those doctrines need to be removed. See, when we talk about doctrine in the church, often what we do is we talk about that preacher that talked false doctrine from the Bible. We talk about that false prophet that gave that false prophetic word. And don't get me wrong, guys, next gen prophets, your big sister here, I cannot stand it. I cannot deal with that kind of stuff. But we overlook the lifestyle doctrines that we've been taught from childhood. I think it's easier, honestly, to deal with false doctrine that we pick up from spiritual leaders because it's obvious, right? And especially when we've had our church hurt, when we've been rejected, when we've been abused by that particular leader, it's easy to say, I rebuke that doctrine. But what about the healthy doctrines? What about the work ethic doctrines that have made you so successful? The work ethic doctrines that have pulled you away from the church because you are a marketplace prophet. The bitterness that comes from that, huh? Obviously, I'm called to make money for the church. Obviously, I'm called to open up doors and systems, but you won't find me serving in church anymore. That's not where I'm called. I'm not called to actually really serve in church. Like, I'm there, I serve, I volunteer, I help out, but I'm not actually going to really do ministry. I'm just there to financially support the church and provide opportunity. I'm there to give money, help host events, but I'm not actually going to really minister to God's people. About that doctrine, ladies and gentlemen. That's false doctrine, because I don't see that in the Word of God. Fire has come to expose, to steal and remove from you the reasoning behind your lifestyle. Third, fire can cause air and water pollution. Smoke releases carbon dioxide, methane, and fine particle matter, often affecting human health and, of course, contributing to climate change. Ash can also, when it runs off into waterways, can suffocate aquatic life and contaminate drinking water. Now, guys, this is called the reallocation of resources. God needs you to reallocate your resources. You have been investing into people. You have been investing into areas that are stealing from where God needs you to go. They are toxic. They are genuine needs, genuine people who need help, but they're not where God has called you. They're not who God has called you to invest in. You're so busy running after all these people, handing out freebies, investing, giving away your time, giving away your money, giving away your family time, giving away everything that you worked so hard for, that God has called you and given to you, investing into all of these people and all of these jobs and all of these things to help God's people. We're giving all our charity here, but we have neglected what God needed us to invest into. Sometimes I have many people reaching out to me and they want me to come preach. They want me to come do all of these great things. And I sit there and I'm unashamed to say, okay, I don't mind. Are you willing to pay for my airfare and a place to stay? I'm not saying it to be me. I'm not saying it because I am wanting money. No, I'm saying it because I'm currently investing here. That's not my call. I'm not called to come preach to the nations at this level. I'm not called to this particular nation at this time. I'm called to start a hub here in San Diego. I'm called here to invest into my tribe. And if you're going to pull me away from what I know God has called me to do, then you better make a way, because that's your call. God's called you to pay the price for that nation. And if you feel that God needs me to come to that nation, to come to that speaking engagement, to come preach, teach, to pour out my oil there, then you better be prepared to pay the price for your call, not me. I will honor, I will respect, and when I get there, I will give you my all. I will give you my blood, sweat, my tears, my guts. I will invest 100% into your people, into your environment, because you've asked that of me, and because God honors that. And I will invest into another priest, temple, and church no matter what. I will do that. But it's not my temple. It's not where I'm called to invest. And so, you know what? I will freely give of my time. I will freely give of my resources to my tribe, to my hub, because that is where God has called me. That is what God has called me to do. And yes, call me prideful. Call me pride. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate. Maybe I'll even get some cancellation for saying this. Call me prideful. Call me money hungry. Call me whatever you want. But I've got a people to feed. I've got children to feed. I've got people that are recovering from chronic sexual abuse. I've got people who are recovering from drug addiction. I've got people that are battling literal demons in their children and in their home that I am investing and I am taking care of, and they need me. And if you're going to pull me away from those people to come minister to your fat pigs who don't want to change but just want to come from revival to revival, then you better prepare the way. Because I got real people who are hungry that I'm called to. Maybe it's prideful. Maybe it's bold. Maybe I'm ruffling some feathers. But can we invest and reallocate our resources to the people God has called us to? Because my fire is not for everybody. My time is not for everybody. My tribe, those of you who are still here listening to this message after all that, who didn't just click out right now, that I am for you. I have the impartation for you. I don't have the impartation for the rest of the world. And so I don't mind being this bold. I don't mind being who I am. Can you do the same? Can you reallocate your resources? Because God is exposing where you are wasting your resources on people and environments and giving away all of it for charity's sake, and you are getting nothing back. You are seeing no growth. You are seeing no change. You're just seeing more and more people coming to you saying, gimme, 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 gimme. I'm going to keep coming back for more, but I'm not going to get out of that abusive relationship. I'm going to keep coming back for more, but I'm not actually going to get a job. I'm going to keep coming back for more, but I'm not actually going to submit to the process and get rid of my demons because I like them. And so I'm wasting time. I'm wasting resources on the person who is changing, who is fighting through and coming every single week religiously to get the help that they need. I'm not going to cancel that appointment with that person just because you had a marital conflict and your spouse manifested on you. You're still with them after God told you to leave. I'm not going to take your call over this, even if this one's non-emergent, because this one's actually paying the price for the call. You can wait until later. I love you. I will be here to help you. I understand that manifestation was not comfortable, is not easy. You don't know what to do. I get it. I will be here for you. I will help you. But in the meantime, I have somebody who's actually bleeding and has a chronic disorder that needs me. And so I'm going to help them out. Reallocate your resources, ladies and gentlemen, because the final portion of the destructive nature is invasive species can spread. See, fire may clear a way for non-native or invasive species that can compete or outcompete local growth or flora or even certain areas which can take up the space that those dormant seeds need to actually grow and flourish. What the fire does is it exposes the enemy in your midst. Remember how I said, oh, suddenly that person became a Jezebel? Oh, suddenly this work environment is so toxic? Oh, suddenly this thing? No, the devil's been in your midst all along. He's been draining your time, your money. He's been stealing and shifting your perspective. He has been, well, just taking over and feeding you all that poisonous food that has made you numb to the darkness surrounding you. So now that we've removed all of that, we've removed the scales, we've pulled back on our resources, we're starting to invest where God needs us to invest, suddenly the invasive species will be exposed. The devil in your midst will be exposed. The real warfare, because the scripture tells us we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of the air. Your real enemy gets exposed. And you begin to recognize the manipulation of the devil. You begin to recognize the demonic attacks and warfare coming against you. You become to recognize it's not normal to be sick this often. Wait, I'm actually getting sleep. Why am I still battling with my blood pressure? I'm actually eating healthy. Why are my blood sugar levels so high? I'm going to the gym. I'm exercising. I'm doing what I need. Why am I still so anorexic? Why am I still battling with my blood iron levels? Why am I still battling and still so exhausted, even though I'm doing and healthy? I'm healthier than I've ever been, and yet I'm still battling with this problem. In fact, it seems worse than before. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the devil's been at play at home while you've been busy ministering and helping everybody else sort out their homes. While you've been out in everybody else's homes, making sure their children are fed, making sure their children are disciplined, making sure their children are tucked in, making sure their marriages are doing okay, he's been wreaking havoc on your marriage. He's been making sure your children are facing temptation like never before. He's been making sure they face the persecution. He's been making sure that dust has been collecting, causing the mold to build up, causing your allergies to flare, causing your lungs to come under attack. That's what he's been doing while you've been out cleaning everybody else's house. Now you come home. Now you recognize where the devil has been at play. This is where you're going to begin to recognize trauma, hidden trauma that you have been neglecting for a very long time. You're going to start noticing knee-jerk reactions that you thought were just those toxic leaders, just all those toxic leaders who just never believed you about all your issues. No, you're still having those triggers at home, even with your spouse, even with your kids, even with a random neighbor, even with a random cat across the road. You're still having those problems come up. Okay, maybe there's something a little deeper we need to look at here. What I thought was that Jezebel going behind my back is still here. I need help. I need counsel. I need to do some warfare. I need to do some bulldozing. I need to tear down some family altars. I need to expose where I have condoned and allowed the devil to run my family, where I have allowed my kids to play those games, watch those movies, do those things, let my husband do what he wants because I just didn't want to fight and I had the work of God to do. I had more important things to do. Let them live their lives. They don't believe in God anyway. I'm the only Christian in my family. You know what? They don't believe me. They don't love me. You know what? Let them do them. I'm going to do me. But the devil's been at play in your home. Just because they don't believe yet doesn't mean you allow the devil into your home. Even unbelievers have certain restrictions on what their children do and do not watch. They have certain expectations of their spouses that are and are not allowed. If even some unbelievers can say, I'm not okay with watching and listening to everything with swearing every 5 minutes. Maybe us Christians can at least be a little bolder about it. If even unbelievers can say, I'm not okay with my children watching, playing, or listening to explicit, gory, over-sexualized stuff. Maybe we believers can come home and say, no, you're not going to watch that. For as long as you live under this roof, you will not be watching, you will not be listening to that. It does not bring a positive attitude. It does not breed a positive lifestyle. If you really want to do that, save up your money, move out, go get your own internet connection, go get your own stuff, and you are welcome to do with what you please. While you live under my roof and I'm paying these bills, I am not going to allow that negative attitude into my home. It's not okay. By all means, please, ladies and gentlemen, don't just go like hammerhead, especially with your spouse. You are going to cause major marital conflict. Don't do that. Have a discussion, talk it through, get some counsel if you need. But let us be bold in exposing and dealing with the enemy in our midst. Because the fire of God is hot. The fire of God is uncomfortable. And it will scar you. It will leave behind a permanent, irreversible change in your life. Because once you see, you will never be able to go back. I will never forget the day I set my room on fire, ladies and gentlemen. True story. Actually, it happened a couple of times, but I'm going to talk about the largest time it happened. I literally set my whole room on fire. I love my smelly candles, and I was one of those teenagers. I like to have my room set up all artsy, in a specific way. I had like a loft bed. It was a whole thing. And so one night, came back after a long day out. I was tired. We were chilling in my room. I was reading a book, and I put on little tea light candles from IKEA with a metal base. And silly me, I don't think I put them on a proper base, to protect my wooden table, highly flammable wooden table that it was sitting on. And I was chilling. My family called me out. I thought I blew out the candles. I more than likely forgot. Came back to my room an hour later. Door, turned on my light. My light wouldn't turn on. Turn it on, off. Looked up and noticed a very brief flickering in my room and a dark cloud, literal dark cloud, leaving my bedroom. My room had caught on fire. My dad ran in there. Something exploded. Managed to put my mom and my sisters soaked each other with leftover bath water from my brother's baby bath time halfway downstairs while my dad's trying to figure out if this is an electrical fire or a wood fire, which, by the way, it turns out, depending on the fire, depends how you put it out. It was a whole dramatic story. Moral of the story is I learned very quickly how not to use candles. And to this day, I'm very particular about candles and things in my room. I don't like walking out of the room, leaving them unattended in any way, shape, or form. I am very particular about watching what I leave behind and the flames that are left open. Once you have been burned, ladies and gentlemen, you don't go back. You don't do those same stupid mistakes. You don't live that same lifestyle. Once the fire of God has come down on you, you are going to be very particular about making sure that that candle has cooled down before you leave the room. Because you don't want to come back to ash. You don't want to come back to a contaminated room. You don't want to come back to an environment that is going to choke the very life out of you and the mandate that God has placed on your life. And a lot of us are living in ashy rooms. We are living in ashy rooms and we can't understand why we are being suffocated. Because God brought fire. And he needs us to change the way we live. That room needs to be decontaminated. It needs to be scrubbed. And we can't live the same way that we lived before. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to ask yourself, where have you been restricted? Where have you been restricted in your life recently? Now, look, I know a lot of you is like, oh, for this many years, I've been restricted. I want you to really just focus on right now. Where are you feeling that restricted? Where have you been restricted in your life? How long? And then from there, I want you to recognize, how long have you been restricted? When did it start? I really want you to narrow down, when did this restriction start? Because more than likely, God has been bringing fire. Then finally, I want you to enter into a dangerous prayer with me. The next week is part 3, where I will wrap up. And then after that, Michael, my incredible husband, your big brother, Prophet Michael, is going to come with activation. He's going to come and just, you see, I may be the one that really encourages fire, but my husband now, he brings the flamethrower. He's very deliberate about starting fires. I don't start them on purpose. I just am fire. My husband, he will start them on purpose. And so after the week after next week, my husband is going to come. He's going to bring that fire. He's going to start that fire in your life. We're going to burn up some dross. We're going to expose some demons. We're going to expose some toxic environments in your life. But for today, I want you to enter into this prayer. Father, I feel so restricted. Where you're feeling that restricted. And I need your fire. I need your fire to come and help me break through this restriction, because I can't break through on my own. I need the power of your irreversible changing fire to change my life completely. And I want you to pray that prayer. I want you to take that time, guys. I don't want you to rush through this. I don't want you to just give me the standard prayer after every, we all have that. You get into a service, a church service, or you go to a conference and the preacher's like, oh, we're going to pray, and you come and you pray along. I don't want you to just pray along. I want you to seek God on where you have been restricted, how long you have been restricted, where did this restriction begin? And then I want you to really ask him to come and remove that restriction. I want you to be deliberate about this fire. Because when this fire comes, I want to hear you come complaining about, my life just suddenly got so difficult. This person is suddenly so mean to me. This thing is suddenly so this. No, it's always been like that. That demon has been in your midst for a very long time. It has been allowed to play in your room. You have allowed it to use your beautiful and expensive shampoo. You have allowed it to eat your favorite cheese. You have allowed it to live beautifully in the home that you curated for it. You just didn't expect him in your midst. You got so used to that housemate that you don't even notice him anymore. And so God's going to light the fire. He's going to expose those people. He's going to expose those environments. He's going to expose those resources. The devil's in your midst. And you need to be ready. This is a deliberate act. If we're going to go start some wildfires, we need to be deliberate. And I want you to be deliberate. So take this time this week, because next week we are going to talk about the restoration through fire. How God brings restoration through fire. Because once destruction comes, once we've laid waste and we've got a clear foundation, we can begin to restore. We can begin to build up. So today I want you to look at what needs to be torn down. I want you to focus on tearing down. Make sure you guys book yourself a consultation if you need them, if you're part of my tribe, especially for you guys. Reach out, connect. Let us get you prayed through. Stuff's going to be coming up. You're going to need some help. Make sure you book that appointment. Let us be there for you. myprophetictribe.com. Go book your free consultation. Let us begin to work through what God needs of you. For those of you who seem to have been in the fire for a very long time, I recommend signing up. Become part of our tribe. Become part of our community, because we don't just work through like we are doing today. We do this like literally every day, every week. Michael and I are doing this with everybody personally and one-on-one. But we have a community that is fighting that fire with you, that is helping you to overcome, that is helping you to harness, that is helping you to direct that fire every single day. You will have an assigned battle buddy that's there to pray with you, to encourage you, to remind you of who you are in Christ. That's what we do here at My Prophetic Tribe. We're here to help you through. So we're going to begin jumping into our breakout room now. For those of you who are stuck around, for those of you who are going to hop off now, I would love to ask for your help. Michael and I are starting a hub here, or no, we are starting an outpost in San Diego. It will be a place for those of you champions, leaders who are going through your process to come to rest, to receive that restoration. It will be a place for those of you going through your prophetic process and training to receive hands-on internship training. We're going to really mentor you one-on-one. We're going to talk you through, how do you run a meeting like this? How do you counsel somebody? How do you pray? How do you do deliverance? We're going to talk about how you put together class work and projects. We're gonna do it all. We're from eating, sleeping, living. How do you infuse everything that you're going through and what you make, and how you invest all of it? Whatever you need, that's what this outpost is going to be. It's a place that you can come and literally stay, to sleep, to receive 24/7 in impartation, interning, mentorship, whatever it is that you need. So for those of you who believe in this vision, who would love to be part of this vision, we've got some giving information in the chat box, in the comment section. Feel free to give towards that hub, or better yet, become a monthly sponsor. If you become a monthly sponsor, this opens up the door for us to get that hub up and running much quicker than we really wanted to. Michael and I are really trying and pushing our hardest to get this opened up soon. Like we want to get this opened up within the next 30 days. We want to get this up within the next month, maximum 2 months, because we know how much you guys need this internationally, locally. You guys just need this time. So become a monthly sponsor. Help us get this hub up and running. Help us get this vision started so that we can then invest and pour back into you guys. Now, those finances also go towards supporting our tribe internationally. We are currently sponsoring about 4 people. 4 people in our tribe are coming to be able to receive this training every single week, several times a week, to really walk out their prophetic call. So thank you for those of you who have already partnered with us, who are already sponsors. We're going to be jumping into our breakout room now. I want to thank you for that. And I will see you guys all next week for part 2, the restoration through fire. Sorry, part 3, restoration through fire. Mwah! I love you guys tons. We're going into our breakout rooms where we're going to ask you questions. See you later.